So after the Night King was killed and the dust had settled on the battlefield at Winterfell, Bran Stark sat quiet, still in his chair, staring at the burned-out trees beyond the broken walls. Nobody really knew what was going on in that mind of his. He barely spoke, barely blinked, just watched. But what no one knew, not Jon, not Arya, not Sansa, was that Bran had already seen everything, every moment, every future. And he didn't like most of them. Some ended with Daenerys burning King's Landing, some with Jon ruling unwillingly, some with Sansa breaking away and starting war again. Too much blood, too many losses. So Bran made a choice. He didn't tell anyone. He just waited till everyone had gone to sleep, and then he warged. His eyes rolled back and his spirit flew back into the past. Not just a few days, not months. He went years back, all the way to the moment Ned Stark rode south with his daughters, the moment everything started. And when Bran arrived there in spirit, he didn't go to his old self. No, he found the ravens. Hundreds of them. His mind spread into all of them like fog in a forest. He started whispering things, small things at first. He nudged memories, dropped hints into dreams. He made maesters wake up with new thoughts, made lords question old loyalties. A shift here, a twist there, like adjusting the roots of a tree before it grows crooked. He first whispered to Varys in his sleep, "The realm needs a true king, a seer, not a warrior. Look north." Then he whispered to Tyrion while the imp was drunk and asleep in his tent before the Battle of Blackwater, "There is one who sees more than you do." He made it so that the three-eyed raven died earlier. He made it so that Bran got pushed from the tower a little sooner. That way he had more time to travel, to learn. He made Hodor hold the door earlier. Sad, yes, but necessary. And then, the biggest move of all, he visited the dreams of Daenerys Targaryen. At first, she resisted. She was strong, full of fire and will, but the whispers kept coming. Every time she looked at Drogon, she saw snow falling. Every time she thought about the Iron Throne, she saw Bran's face instead. It confused her. It made her doubt herself. That was enough. Back in the present, everything changed. The war against the Night King still happened, but now people listened to Bran. He spoke up, told them what to do, where to strike, and when. They followed. Arya still made the kill. But this time, Bran stood up from his chair after the battle. And he spoke, loud and clear. "The war is not over," he said. "Now we must fix the realm." They looked at him strange. Even Jon Bran didn't wait. He asked for a council to be held at Harrenhal. Not Dragon Pit, not Winterfell. He said Harrenhal was the place where the past had bled into the future many times. Symbolic. The lords agreed, half curious, half confused. When they gathered, something was different. Bran had already placed ravens in every hall, in every house. His voice had reached them all. They had heard the prophecies in their sleep, seen strange visions in their glass candles. Every lord and lady came to the council already feeling like they knew who should rule. They couldn't explain why, but they all had the same name on their tongues, Bran the Broken. Except this time, Bran wasn't broken. He stood on his own 2 feet, another trick of time. He had shifted the injury slightly. He was still frail, still thin, but he stood. That image shook them all. A boy once pushed from a tower, now standing taller than kings. Tyrion was the one who finally said it out loud. What if the realm was led not by blood or birth, but by wisdom? What if the throne wasn't a prize, but a duty? All eyes turned to Bran, and Bran, with a calm face, nodded once. "Then I accept." There was no vote, no debate. Somehow, everyone just agreed. Just like that. But it wasn't just luck. Bran had planted the idea in every corner of Westeros, in stories, in dreams, in songs, even in old Valyrian scrolls that suddenly turned up in Maester's hands. The world had been tilted long before the council was called. From that day forward, Bran was king, the true king, Not a placeholder, not a compromise. He was the beginning and the end of it all. The Iron Throne melted. He didn't need it. Instead, Bran built a new throne from wood of the weirwood trees. White, red-veined, quiet. He said it connected him to the old gods and the new. The people believed him, and in Winterfell Sansa watched from the shadows. Quiet. And still, she was proud, but she also knew something wasn't right. Things had moved too smoothly. People had agreed too quickly. It was like they had been told what to think, and she wasn't the only one who felt it. Jon Snow stood at the wall, watching the cold winds return. Far away from politics, far from thrones. But even he felt it, that strange feeling in his bones, like time had shifted under his feet. And far beyond the seas, deep in the halls of old Valyria, an ancient dragon stirred in its sleep. It felt something unnatural in the wind, something that didn't belong. Bran had made his move, but even time has consequences. The first months of Bran's reign passed like a dream. No bloodshed, no rebellion, no loud voices rising in protest. It was strange how quickly the Seven Kingdoms adjusted. Lords who once fought tooth and nail over land now bowed their heads to a boy who barely moved. But Bran wasn't a boy anymore, and he wasn't just a king. He was something else. He didn't rule from King's Landing. That place was ashes, and he left it that way. Instead, he chose a place near the God's Eye, a new castle, plain but strong, made of dark stone and pale wood. No iron, no gold. He named it the Eyehold. The council stayed the same, on paper at least. Tyrion as hand, Brienne with the King's Guard, Davos with the fleets. But they noticed something. Their thoughts felt slower around Bran, like he was always one step ahead. Like every word they said he'd heard it before. They whispered about it. Tyrion tried to brush it off his nerves. He's a green seer, he told them. He's bound to know a few things before we do. But deep down, even Tyrion felt the chill. Sometimes Bran would answer questions that hadn't been asked yet. Sometimes he would dismiss a threat before anyone even spoke of it. The Stepstones. Pirates, the Ironborn Rebellion, the Dothraki clans gone wild in the Reach. Bran had orders ready before news even arrived, and then came the disappearances. Not many, just a few, quiet ones. Lords who had once spoken loud against the North. Old maesters who had doubted magic. A knight from Old Town who mocked Bran's throne of roots and whispers. They vanished. No bodies, no screams. Just gone. At first, no one dared ask, but when Sansa visited Eyehold, she noticed the silence. She noticed how the guards stared too, long, how the ravens perched on windows in rows, watching everyone. She asked Bran about the missing men. Bran just blinked, slow. They were part of paths that led to war. I pruned the branches. Sansa stared at him. You what? I fixed what needed fixing. Time bends. I bend with it. That was the first time Sansa realized her little brother was not just ruling. He was shaping everything. Quietly. Constantly. Back in the North, she started making copies of old letters. Writing down things before she forgot them. She wasn't sure why. Maybe she feared Bran might start changing memories too. Arya was the next to visit. She had sailed far, beyond the maps, beyond the known. But something called her back. Dreams, maybe, or a voice. She found herself riding toward the Eyehold in the dead of night. Bran welcomed her, smiled even, offered no guards, no throne, no distance, just a walk through the woods. They walked under the trees until they reached a clearing full of roots and faces carved into bark. Weirwoods from every corner of the realm, replanted here by Bran's command. This is the real throne now, Bran said. The people don't know it, but they feel it. Arya looked around. Why am I here? You're the last piece I need, he said. For what? For the future I've seen, the one where everything stays still. Arya shook her head. You want stillness? That's not life, that's death. Bran tilted his head. It's peace. Arya left that night, didn't sleep, didn't speak, just rode fast. South maybe, or west again. anywhere away from Bran's roots. Back in King's Landing, what was left of it, Tyrion walked the ruins. Alone one morning, he stared at the melted throne, the scorched stones, the empty halls. Then he heard the voice, not loud, not booming, just a whisper in his mind. "Do you regret it?" He spun around. No one there. "Do you wonder if you chose—" Wrong. He dropped his cup. It shattered. He rode for Eyehold the next day, pale and shaking. Bran greeted him with calm eyes. "Stop whispering in my head," Tyrion said. "I didn't," Bran replied. Tyrion looked away. "Then who did?" Bran didn't answer, just turned and rolled. Back into the hall. Birds following him in the rafters. That same week, 24 ravens flew out from Eyehold. They scattered across the kingdoms, dropping messages written in red ink. Each scroll said the same thing. The realm is safe. All is as it should be. Obey the balance. Most small folk ignored it, but lords took it seriously. Some felt comfort, others fear. In dawn, Prince Marwyn burned his message and said nothing. In the Vale, young Lord Arryn built a tower with no doors and locked himself inside. In the Riverlands, old Tully Knight started whispering about the Seer King who watches even in sleep. Bran didn't care. He just kept sitting beneath the weirwoods, his eyes white more often than blue. He watched everything, and everything bent around him. But something strange was starting to happen. Somewhere far in the east, priests of R'hllor began dreaming of a new fire. Not red, not gold, but blue fire, cold fire. Fire that walked like a man. And beyond the wall, the ground began to shake. The dead didn't rise, but the wind carried. Whispers. Something was coming, something Bran hadn't seen, or maybe he had, and had chosen not to tell. Snow fell heavy in the north, even though it wasn't winter yet. The skies over Winterfell stayed grey for weeks, and the wolves howled at night like they knew something was wrong. Sansa kept to the great hall more than usual. She stopped smiling, stopped talking much. She wrote letters, sealed them, then burned them the next day without sending. Maester Edric tried to speak with her once. She just shook her head and said, "He's watching." She didn't say who. Meanwhile, down in Eyehold, Bran sat still for hours at a time, sometimes days. The servants left food, but it stayed untouched. His council came and went with updates. Minor. Rebellions, a storm wrecking a harbour, some free folk stirring beyond the wall, but Bran didn't react. Then, on the 10th day of silence, Bran finally moved. He opened his eyes, stood up without help, and told the guards, "Call them, all of them." So messages flew, ravens by the hundreds, to every corner of Westeros. Not just to lords and ladies, but to septons, sellswords, maesters, and even former enemies. Tyrion got his first. He read it with shaking hands. "The pattern is fractured. Return at once." He didn't know what it meant, but he packed and rode within the hour. In the east, Daenerys had been alive. Hidden, Bran had changed that too. In this timeline, she was never stabbed. She never burned the city. She vanished during the final battle, taken by Drogon and never seen again, until now. She arrived at Eyehold on dragonback, her hair silver in the moonlight, her eyes tired. Bran met her at the gate, unbothered by the sight of Drogon landing. "You said the world would be safe," she told him. "I made it safe." "You made it silent," she said. "That's not the same thing." He turned his back and walked toward the throne of roots. "There's a crack. I need your fire." Jon Snow came next. The North had called him back, but when he reached Winterfell, Sansa had only said, "He wants us all." Jon didn't argue, he just nodded. He still carried long claw, still wore black. But the wild look in his eyes had faded. He was just tired now. When he reached Eyehold, he found Arya waiting by the gate. Neither of them smiled. They just nodded, like soldiers meeting again after a long war. Inside, Bran stood with Tyrion, Sansa, Arya, Jon, Daenerys and Samwell, who had come with scrolls and books bound in chains. They gathered around a black table shaped like the seven-pointed star. Bran placed a stone in the center, a strange crystal that pulsed faintly blue. "This came from beyond the wall," he said. "Buried in ice. It doesn't belong here." Daenerys leaned in. "Is it the Night King's?" "No. It's older." Sam opened a scroll. "I found writings in old Valyria, fragments. They talk about a power before the first men, before the children, something that sees through time but doesn't follow it." Jon frowned. "Like you?" Bran nodded. "But wild, unbound. I think my changes woke it." Tyrion poured himself wine. "So you're telling us the world's falling apart because you rewrote time?" Bran stared at him. "Yes." Silence fell. Arya stepped forward. "So what do we do?" Bran said. "We go back again." They didn't understand at first. He explained that to fix the crack in the pattern, someone had to enter the moment before the first change, the second he shifted the timeline. He couldn't do it, not again, but someone could, someone untouched by magic, by prophecy. All eyes turned to Jon. "No," he said. "I already gave everything." "This is the last thing," Bran said. "The final piece." Jon laughed bitterly. "You want me to go back in time? What happens then?" "You won't return, but everything else might." Sansa looked sick. Arya looked angry. Tyrion didn't speak. Daenerys stepped forward. "I'll do it." Bran shook his head. "You're tied to the fire. Time bends around you already. It won't hold." Jon closed his eyes. "If I go, does this fix everything?" "No," Bran said, "but it resets the board. I won't be king. Time will flow as it was meant to. Maybe better, maybe worse, but true." Jon looked around at the others, at the stone walls, the cold wind, the throne made of roots. "Then I'll go." That night, they gathered in the weirwood circle. Bran drew lines in the snow with blood. The crystal pulsed stronger. Jon stepped into the center. No ceremony, no speeches, just one question. Arya asked it. "Will we remember you?" Bran looked at her. "No." Then the light flared. The trees shook. The earth cracked, and Jon Snow was gone. The moment Jon vanished, the world stuttered. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a sharp tug, like a thread pulled too tight. The air shimmered for a breath, the sky dimmed, and then silence. In Eyehold, everyone stood frozen, waiting. Tyrion gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Arya had her blade drawn without realizing it. Daenerys stared at the spot where Jon had stood, her expression unreadable. And Bran? He didn't move. Not at first. Then slowly, like a puppet with its strings cut, he collapsed. Sansa was the first to rush to him. "Bran!" she shouted, shaking him, but he didn't respond. His eyes were rolled back, mouth slightly open. He wasn't warging, he wasn't unconscious. He was just empty. Sam knelt beside him and checked his pulse. "He's alive," he whispered. "But something's wrong. He's hollow." Before they could speak more, a deep groan echoed through the hall. The walls trembled. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the roots beneath the weirwood throne turned black. "What's happening?" Arya demanded, stepping back. Sam stood. He said it would reset, that the timeline would fix itself. Tyrion frowned. "Then why is the castle falling apart?" Outside, the snow stopped mid-air. Literally, flakes hovered, frozen in place like the world had forgotten how to move forward. Daenerys backed away slowly, staring at the white sky. "This isn't resetting, this is collapsing." Arya turned toward the doors. "We need to get out." But it was too late. From the shadows beyond the hall, something stepped in. It wasn't a man. It wasn't a beast. It wasn't anything they could name, tall, cloaked in darkness that bled into the floor, with a face that flickered between thousands. Old kings, dead men, children, animals, flames, stars. Every second it changed. It spoke in a voice that wasn't a voice, but every whisper they'd ever heard in a dream. You broke the river. You moved the stone. Tyrion stumbled back. What is that? Sam's voice was a whisper. The pattern. It's not just time. It's a living thing. The creature took a step forward. The air behind it cracked like glass. It looked at Bran. He was never meant to touch the thread. Arya drew her sword and stepped in front of Bran's body. You're not taking him. The creature tilted its head. He does not belong, nor do you. This world is no longer your own. Then it reached out a hand of smoke and shadow. Sansa screamed. Tyrion threw his wine cup. Daenerys stepped forward and shouted a word. In Valyrian, Dracarys. But there was no flame. Drogon wasn't there. And even if he was, fire wouldn't matter here. Just before the shadow touched Bran, a blinding light split the sky, and Jon Snow stepped out of it. But not the Jon they remembered. This Jon wore the furs of the Night's Watch, the sword of the King in the North, and the eyes of someone who had seen everything and forgotten nothing. He held the blue crystal in his hand. The same one Bran had used to send him back, but now it was white-hot with energy. He raised it. The shadow hissed. You carry the fracture. Jon didn't speak. He threw the crystal at the base of the weirwood throne. It exploded. Light shot through the roots, into the walls, into the very bones of Eyehold. The world shuddered again, and this time something changed. Bran gasped and sat up, his eyes clear, no more white, just human. Sansa held him tight. Bran, he blinked. Where am I? Tyrion turned to Jon. What did you do? Jon stepped forward, his voice calm but heavy. I finished it. I gave time a new branch, one without him. He pointed to the shadow, now shrinking, flickering. Daenerys looked from Jon to Bran. Then what is this, Bran? Jon looked at her. A boy. Just a boy. Bran stared at the hall around him, confused, dazed. What happened? Sam said softly. You were king. Bran laughed. That's a stupid idea. The others didn't laugh. Arya slowly lowered her sword. So, is it over? Jon shook his head. No, it never ends. But now it can continue. The shadow let out a final cry, an echo of all the wrong choices, all the twisted timelines, all the stolen futures. Then it vanished, sucked into the ground like mist. The snow began to fall again, real this time. Soft, cold, peaceful. Outside Eyehold, the skies cleared. Bran stood on his own, shaky but real. He looked at the others. I don't remember being king, Tyrion said. Be thankful. Jon turned away. The boards reset. Choose your pieces wisely. And then, like before, he walked into the snow. But this time, no one stopped him. The days after the fall of Eyehold were strange. Not chaotic, not calm, just strange. The great black castle Bran had ruled from was no more. It didn't collapse like in a battle. It just faded stone by stone, like it had never truly belonged in this world. The throne of roots turned to dust, and the strange ravens that used to follow Bran scattered and didn't return. The people didn't remember Eyehold. Not really. They talked about a storm in the Riverlands, a small fire in a keep nobody had heard of. No one could say what had really happened there. No songs were written, no tales told, but the ones who were there, they remembered. Even if the world refused to, Sansa returned to Winterfell with Bran. She took charge again, calmly, without speech or ceremony. The people were glad to see her. The bannermen praised her strength. Bran said nothing about the past. He spent his days walking slowly around the Godswood, as if rediscovering himself. He didn't talk about visions. He didn't mention thrones. It was like the old Bran was back, quiet, kind, and ordinary. Arya didn't stay. The next morning after the fall of Eyehold, she left without a word. Sansa woke to find a letter on her table. The world is real again. I need to see the rest of it." Arya Sansa smiled sadly. She knew she wouldn't see her sister again for a long time. Down in the capital, something else had changed. Kings. Landing was still broken, walls cracked, towers burnt, the throne room open to the sky. But people were rebuilding, not under a king, not under a queen, but together. A council had formed, made up of lords, merchants, and even some common folk. They didn't know why they trusted each other, but somehow they did. Tyrion stayed there. He helped write the rules. He taught them how to argue without war. He drank less and laughed more, though sometimes he stared at the stars too long and whispered, "He's really gone." Samwell Tarly went back to the Citadel. Not to be a maester this time. He opened a new hall, the Archive of Possibilities, he called it. He wrote down everything he remembered about the pattern, the shadow, the war with time. Most didn't believe him, but he wrote anyway. Daenerys vanished. Again. She didn't speak to anyone before leaving, just climbed atop Drogon and flew east. Some say she went back to Valyria. Others say she died in the skies. But Tyrion believed she was looking for something. Answers, maybe. Or just peace. And Jon, no one knew. He had walked into the woods after destroying the crystal, and not a single person saw him again. Some believed he went back to the wall, even though it no longer stood like before. Others thought he returned, to the free folk, living among them, far from power and titles. There were whispers of a man in black who visited old ruins and stared at stars, who spoke to wolves and never aged, but no one was sure, and in the quiet lands beyond the Dothraki Sea, something grew, not dark, not evil, but new. From the old magic Bran had tampered with, from the cracks that had been sealed shut again. Something took root in the far lands, a grove of trees that hummed like bells in the wind, flowers that glowed at night, and a single stone, smooth and pale blue, lying at the heart of it all, a new kind of magic, untouched by time, unclaimed by man. Back in Winterfell, Sansa stood on the battlements with Bran beside her. Snow was falling again, gently this time. "Do you remember anything?" she asked. Bran shook his head. "Just flashes, dreams maybe. I saw a dragon made of snow once, and a hall with no doors." She nodded. "It happened. You just don't need to carry it anymore." He looked at her. "Did I hurt anyone?" Sansa didn't answer right away. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, you just wanted to help." He stared out into the snow. "Then I'm lucky." She smiled softly. "We both are." For the first time in years, peace actually felt possible. No thrones, no prophecies, no chosen ones, just people trying to live without rewriting the world. Years passed. The war-torn lands healed slowly. The castles were rebuilt stone by stone. The people didn't speak much of the old kings, or dragons, or magic. They just worked, raised their children, and prayed for peace that wouldn't vanish the moment a crown touched someone's head. The stories changed. Songs spoke of winters survived, not battles won. Tales told around fires focused on clever farmers, brave healers, and lost children who found their way home. Magic was still whispered about, but now it sounded more like old myth than truth. In Winterfell, Sansa ruled the north wisely. She didn't call herself queen. She said she was warden, like her father before her. The people respected that. Bran stayed with her, never leaving the north again. He walked now, slowly, using a carved staff made from the last root of the throne of Ihold. He taught the children how to read the stars, how to listen to the trees without expecting answers. They said he was odd but kind. Nobody called him the three-eyed raven anymore. Sam's archive grew bigger. It became a haven for those curious about the world, not just maesters but wanderers, writers, even former knights. He named one hall after Jon Snow, another after Arya. He never explained why. In the Reach, a boy found a strange stone in a riverbed, pale blue, smooth, humming quietly. He brought it to a Septon, who said it was cursed and told the boy to throw it away. The boy kept it anyway. He said it made him dream of snow and wolves. Out beyond the wall, free folk spoke of a shadow in the mountains, a man who walked with direwolves and spoke little. Some said he healed a dying bear by laying hands on it. Others said he walked into a blizzard and never returned. They called him Ghost Brother. No one ever confirmed if it was Jon. In the east, a silver-haired woman walked alone through the ruins of old Valyria. Her dragon circled the skies, never straying far. She spoke to no one, slept by the sea, and stared at the stars for hours. Some said she was mad, others said she was mourning a time that never happened. Back in King's Landing, the new council ruled fairly. Tyrion never took a title again. He lived in a small house near the water with a garden and too many books. Children came to him with questions, and he always answered with a joke before the truth. One night, during a soft rain, Tyrion lit a candle and pulled out a bottle of old Dornish red. He sat by his fire, thinking of all the things they had done. Things the world didn't even remember. He raised his glass and whispered, "To the broken timelines, and the ones who fix them." No one heard him, but far off, in the heart of the woods, beneath a growing tree with red leaves and a strange silver glow, a raven landed and tilted its head, like it remembered something. The world went on, and that was the point. Not everyone had to be a king, not every gift had to be used. Some things, like time, were better left untouched. The end.